All right. So the webinar is titled, Are You Ready for Your FFIEC Audit? My name is Joe Murphy, and I'm joined by Lydia Dwyer, Product Manager, and Scott McKeown, our Director of Security Operations. Thank you for joining us today, Lydia and Scott.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey guys, thanks.
All right. So first things first, let's cover a little agenda. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to go over 4 things. So 7 things that we learned from helping our clients get through their FFIEC audits and what you need to know before, during, and after an audit. We're going to give you a checklist, practical items of what you need to do, and how to get it done, even if you don't have the resources, because we know that every organization doesn't have the benefit of having the resources that they need to get things accomplished. And before we dive in, let's address the elephant in the room here. Anxiety, right? I mean, you either don't have enough time or resources, you're not sure what to expect, you don't know where to start, and you really don't want to go through that again. So we're going to start off with 7 tips for FFIEC compliance. I think you guys will get some really good benefits out of these 7 tips here. So the first tip is don't panic. It's always going to be daunting at first. And Lydia, I'm going to ask you this question here. Is a lot of people think the FFIEC is out to get them. Are they?
The short answer to that question is no. FFIEC is really not out to get you. Ultimately, the FFIEC is just there to help financial institutions with cyber risk measurement and management through minimum standards and enforcement of those standards. They produce the FFIEC IT Examination Handbook for financial institutions to use as a guide to meet their requirements. So they really are trying to help you meet those requirements rather than gotcha.
Yeah. And Scott, any advice for people who might be nervous about the process?
Yeah. I would say, don't be nervous, breathe. Preparation's everything. My mantra with any audit or fault testing is to over-prepare. So have every artifact that you can anticipate ready in advance. They'll always want more and will do spot checks, but having a good repository in place never hurts. And we'll talk about plenty of tools and checklists available as we go here.
All right, great. Tip number 2, expectations. So know more and beg less. Lydia, let's start with the basics here. What is FFIEC?
Okay. So FFIEC, most of you watching this probably already know what the FFIEC is, but if you don't, and maybe at this point you're just too afraid to ask, the FFIEC stands for the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council, and it is a U.S. government interagency body empowered to prescribe uniform principles, standards, and report forms for the federal examination of financial institutions. Some of the members of the FFIEC include the National Credit Union Administration, or NCUA, among some other U.S. government bodies. So basically, it's just standards that apply to every financial institution and credit union regulated in the U.S.
Okay, thank you. And do you want to talk about what some key requirements might be, Lydia?
Yeah, so key requirements include building a strong information security culture in the organization, having defined risk identification processes, having effective risk monitoring and reporting processes, and consistent security operations processes, as well as allocating adequate resources, e.g. staff, technology, to the information security program. So it's a pretty broad set of requirements that go beyond just the technology.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, you've been around the block for a while. So in your experience, how many credit unions are prepared for those expectations going in? I mean, are they off the mark?
Yeah, so I think any team in the credit union or finance field that's been around for a few seasons, they'll have touched, an FFIEC or similar audit at least a few times. Most of the basics are fairly similar and predictable. at least for artifacts and big picture security controls. I mean, the biggest gotchas, I would say, where teams get surprised can be when new technology stacks are slowly incorporated into the business and suddenly they're in scope for your audit. A great example of that would be, the increasing utilization of AWS or similar hosted web services. So for AWS, stuff like utilizing CloudTrail, an AWS Trusted Advisor, which is an internal tool that they have available for you. Something simple like that can be the difference between passing and failing your audit.
Mm-hmm.
The FFIEC actually has a great guide to their auditing methodologies for AWS that I can provide to everyone after the webinar. Another one I would say is probably the increase in deception technologies, both human and technical, used by auditors to compromise assets. That one can be tricky because there's no real silver bullet there to prevent getting popped on this one. It just requires good old-fashioned security controls, human security training, and then security monitoring.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Lydia? All right, tools of the trade. This is tip number 3. Lydia, you mentioned a handbook earlier. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the FFIEC IT Information Technology IT Examination Handbook. Specifically, the Information Security Booklet is what's relevant here. This is the main guide for what an organization's information security program should look like to manage risk effectively and be compliant. So the booklet is also the main guide for the FFIEC examiner, auditor coming in to actually assess any given organization's information security program for compliance. Well, in practice, not everything in the handbook will apply to your organization, and there may be additional controls not in the handbook that an auditor will want to see your organization implement, for example, with what Scott mentioned around the cloud security or cloud technologies coming in every day. The standard may not have caught up, but auditor will want to know about those controls. But
Yep.
Overall, it's the main set of standards to guide you to FFIEC compliance.
Mm-hmm. And are there any other tools that people should know about?
Yep. So there's a couple more tools, especially that our hundreds of customers use. So one main tool is in addition to the IT examination handbook, FFIEC also produces their own cybersecurity assessment tool, or CAT. It's a 2-part assessment that helps institutions identify their risks via an inherent risk profile and then determine their cybersecurity maturity level. The FFIEC CAT is consistent with the principles of the IT handbook, and it is also consistent with the NIST cybersecurity framework, making it a good option if you need to comply with multiple regulatory standards. And then another tool, mainly for credit unions specifically, the NCUA uses and puts out the automated cybersecurity examination tool, ACET.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an Excel-based tool aligned with the FFIEC requirements, but in an Excel sheet with some macros to make it a lot easier to actually put all your information in there and get your result rather than just a PDF.
Yeah.
So it just spits out controls and auto-populates.
Yep, and has all the answers you need to all the questions. So it's nice like that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lydia. All right, guys, tip number 4, before the audit. So you need to comply with FFIEC regulations, either directly or through a member body like NCUA. Maybe you've been through an audit before, or maybe you haven't. Maybe your role's changed since your last audit and you have new responsibilities. Here at Sigillum, we've seen that the most successful approach to an audit is to keep it simple. Assess where your organization is in terms of inherent risk and cybersecurity maturity, and just take baby steps to either close those gaps or improve your cybersecurity maturity level. Lydia, a question for you: Does the FFIEC give any specific steps that you should follow to prepare?
Yeah. So great question. Actually, the FFIEC recently put out a statement encouraging institutions to adopt a standardized approach or a tool when actually working before an audit to go through and actually figure out if you're compliant. While the FFIEC did not specifically endorse any a standard tool that they want you to use, they did name a few popular options. One is their own CAT tool, but then also they said you can use the NIST cybersecurity framework, and also the Center for Internet Security Critical Security Controls framework is also really good. But ultimately, the best thing you can do to prepare is pick a framework, a tool, and stick to it. Keep it simple, like that.
Scott, if is there any of those frameworks that you would pick if you had to start from scratch?
Yeah. So I mean, operationally, I always say start simple and fundamental. So the CIS, CSC, the critical security controls, they're 20 attainable and pretty realistic controls that have clear implementation guidelines. This would be something I would verify an organization has locked down before moving on to implementing something like the FFIEC CAT tool. Depending on the size and structure of the organization, if there isn't a single internal point of contact that's clearly dedicated to working directly with auditors, I'd establish that really early in the process. Identify primary stakeholders from each part of the organization. Another huge one is to get a decent vulnerability management system or scanner deployed and up to scanning as early as possible. Organization-wide patching and config fixing to address known vulnerabilities seems like a super simple fix, but due to high availability and change management processes, it can take a while. Known open vulnerabilities are still far and away the largest and easiest attack surface to exploit.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Tip number 5, during the audit, right? Preparation pays off. I mean, if you take the steps to prepare, the audit's going to be a lot less stressful. It's going to reduce the risk of getting blindsided by the auditor with a control request. Scott, what kind of things do auditors ask to see?
So, a lot of it is the basics of IT programmatic documentation. So evidence of controls. It's pretty interesting. The FFIEC came out with, the top 5 focuses of they did an industry-wide study a few years ago. They're, pretty broad, but they're fundamentally common sense practices that contribute to overall prep. So that would be like a formal risk management and oversight program, the existence and hopefully utilization of a threat intelligence and collaboration system within your cybersecurity program. And then I would say like CIS level cybersecurity controls. So, those basic 20 that we talked about before, NIST could work fine there. External dependency management, that's becoming more and more focused in the audit. And that, varies auditor to auditor. But you can think back to my previous statement about services like AWS in the document we'll send out after this. And then, in my opinion, the most important, which is, incident management and resilience.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, I know the answer to this question, but I want to ask you, Scott. So does the audit process affect or disrupt other IT projects, right? Stuff has to go on hold. Does it mess up your day-to-day security operations? I mean, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, definitely. And that varies wildly, organization to organization. I would say it depends largely on 2 factors, though. So the size of your team and your level of preparedness. Even for small teams that are flat out busy, you can mitigate some of those interruptions by, appointing a single audit czar or committee who's responsible for internally quarterbacking the logistical efforts for the audit prep and response. Ideally, you would want someone with a compliance or risk management or IT background. However, it can be someone, capable regardless of background, depending on, how strapped you are. Having someone to organize the demands and prioritize them, who can assign tasks to the right party and can be the difference between passing and failing.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds simple, but it stands out. Also having an easy to access and central repository for artifacts is huge.
You want to tell us about some successful audits that you've helped out with? I know you've worked on a lot.
Yeah, so, I mean, the best results that we see from working with organizations undergoing audits are the ones that reach out to partner with us early. So the more visibility and communication, the better. So if we have the ability to see past audit reports and what the pain points were in years past, we can work to eliminate those well in advance of audit time. Even if we don't have that, we can be at the ready for, whenever an audit might happen, to be prepared to provide anything needed for additional clarification.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. All right, tip number 6, everybody. Now what, right? The audit's over. What do we do now? Scott, do you want to talk to that for a little bit? You're done with the audit. Now what?
Sure. I mean, I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but canonize your repository. Make it a go-to and well-frequented place that's maintained and added to regularly. Use the momentum gained from preparing for and responding to the audit to move the security culture of the team and greater organization forward. That's a checkbox, like one of the big ones that no one really talks about on the first thing the auditor looks for when they walk in. So keep the conversation going. It makes a big difference. As new processes and technologies are implemented, just do your due diligence. Make sure that you have the security components of them locked down, formalized, and documented upon arrival.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you have any stories for us about, maybe a time when a company was able to turn it around after they failed an audit? Maybe what went wrong and how did they improve on the next one?
Yeah, I have plenty. So I would say one of the best and most recent examples would be a company that churned part of their C-suite and their entire IT team in the month leading up to their FFIEC and GLBA audits.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so brand new CIO, system administrator, and risk management guy. They weren't necessarily blindsided, but they were essentially a 3-person team trying to put the pieces together of a company-wide IT operation while simultaneously preparing for a pretty intense audit season. It was a perfect use case for bootstrapping an audit prep. They failed their first pass for a simple but crucial reason. Once again, they lacked a full central repository for their artifacts. So they were rebuilding theirs leading up to the audit, assumed it would be there, and it turned out they actually had the necessary artifacts, but they were spread in a bunch of different SMB file shares individually. Some of them were printed out in physical form.
No.
So, I mean, again, same thing. But that's all too common.
The turnover in the C-suite, that must have been tough to deal with, to bounce back from. All right, so we know that people make all the difference, but do you have what you need? Do you have the people on staff to achieve FFIEC compliance? Scott, let's talk about some challenges that small teams might have when trying to achieve FFIEC compliance.
Yeah, so simple again. I mean, I would say the biggest issues for small teams, they're pretty well indicated in the FFIEC industry study I mentioned before. So in my opinion, the incident management and resilience stands out as a big one. And having dedicated staff and time to running audits regularly. Ideally, most programs now that see success are running them quarterly. So it's become a regular part of the workflow where those results are going to the board more often than the auditors need them. And the biggest thing is lack of budget for appropriate tooling and programs. I mean, that's actually a checkbox for the auditors as well. Yeah.
All right. So those were the 7 tips, and we are going to share these slides with everyone that may have joined late. So fear not, you will receive all 7 tips after this webinar wraps up. But so after helping hundreds of people that maybe felt alone in the process, we were able to just help them along through that process and make it a lot easier. They're not alone, and that's why Sigillum exists. We are here to help. Lydia, do you want to talk a little bit about how Sigillum can help with the FFIEC requirements?
Yeah, yep. I can help illuminate how we, at least from the product perspective,
Yep.
help with compliance. So we provide 3 products: security monitoring, vulnerability management, patch management, that can help you meet FFIEC compliance requirements on a budget. All these services come with our main SOC platform. It's a single pane of glass web application that you can interact with all your data and improve your security posture and interact with the services team that comes with our products. So for security monitoring, you get SIM technology that you need to monitor IT infrastructure for alerts and security incidents. We offer actually a choice of our own SecureView Cloud technology SIM, or we also partner with AlienVault, and we integrate with their USM Anywhere SIM. It just depends with our clients on their needs, which one is right for them, and that's very dependent on the customer. And then with that, we also provide 24/7 alert monitoring with Sigillum SOC team, and also a dedicated cybersecurity advisor as your point of contact who works with the companies on all the security monitoring data. And then we also have vulnerability management. We provide unlimited internal, external vulnerability scanning of your network and systems with best-in-breed vulnerability scanning technology, managed by the cybersecurity advisor so that you can focus on other tasks, provide vulnerability remediation and guidance, and that, again, that one point of contact in the cybersecurity advisor. And then with patch management, we offer remote patching of top operating systems in a large library of third-party software patches, as well as a best practices change control process built into the workflow. And all those part of SOC platform really help meet a number of the compliance requirements written out in the FFIEC standard. And Scott can say a little bit more about the services component that you get with all of them.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. So this is a big one, and being from the SOC and security services side of the house, I definitely have a bit of a biased view on this, I'd say. But I'd say it all boils down to really the comfort of knowing that almost any evidence that we have available to us, we can slice and dice and get it back to you almost immediately to meet the needs of whatever's being requested, as that changes, single audit to single audit. Over the past couple of years, I've actually grown to really enjoy audit season for our financial sector clients. And the real reason for that is just that it brings out kind of the best in a partnership we have with our clients, mainly because we're both working together toward the same goal. It highlights the versatility of your cybersecurity advisor, along with your dedicated SOC analyst and the global SOC as a whole. But we found that, clients that are motivated to work proactively with us in their upcoming audits continue to do so straight afterward. And helping to build, that security culture that auditors want to see becomes kind of second nature. As long as our team's informed in advance, and plenty times, even if not, we can advise on the types of evidence needed up front. And most importantly, our services can serve as a live play-by-play response to auditing. We have some clients that are literally printing off their tickets as they're being pen tested for live proof of, incident notification and response. But in addition to that, each of our SIM platforms that Lydia mentioned that we offer can be leveraged to slice data basically on the fly to meet any auditor's unique reporting needs, and they do vary.
It makes the client's life a lot easier. So this is moving on, the first of 2 surprises that we have for you all today. And Lydia, I know you played a big role in this, and we recently just rolled it out, the new FFIEC reporting. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
So speaking of evidence that your auditor will want to see, so we just debuted our own FFIEC report. We actually custom built this for our USM Anywhere, AlienVault USM Anywhere customers because they didn't already have a default compliance template. So we decided to fill that gap And what we, because of our deep experience with credit unions and in the financial industry, we came up with a template that will help with reporting. The information in this report helps provide visibility to generally the security monitoring data, which and then the data that actually either directly or partially informs your organization's answers to the FFIEC standard. So there's a lot of charts and tables that provide a lot of different information. But honestly, the best part about this reporting feature with USM Anywhere is that it's not just a snapshot in time report. These are actually it's a set of live dashboards that while you can export it as like a PDF, so you have a snapshot in time, you can go in every single day and see the latest data, go interact with your data, drill down into it. It's a really great report for FFIEC compliance needs.
Yeah, it definitely helps you keep, your thumb on the pulse of the controls that, the FFIEC wants you looking at anyway, and they can become just a part of your natural day-to-day workflow.
Yep. A lot of people were looking for this report, so we went ahead and built it. All right, so before moving on, everyone, I just want to throw a quick poll out there for everybody. So if you could just, we'll leave this up for about 15 seconds or so. Just go ahead and let us know, before we move forward, if you'd like to be contacted further after this for a one-to-one, just some additional information. I know we only had a limited amount of time here, so we want to make sure that we follow up with everyone who registered, attended, may have missed it, and we just want to be there for you all to answer any questions that you have. All right. Thank you, everybody. So, I would love to let everyone know this is the second surprise. So, those of you that have registered for this webinar, you are going to receive the first 2019 cybersecurity playbook developed in-house by our Sigillant cybersecurity experts. And this playbook is going to be ready in about a week or two, and we'll be sure to send that along to all of you. I think you're going to love it. There's a lot of good stuff you can do with this playbook to elevate your cybersecurity maturity, whether you are early stages or you have a mature security program, right? We never know, the threat landscape's always evolving, what's going to be around the corner. So I'd like to take a moment and open it up for questions, comments, concerns. Please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat, and I'll address them as they come. All right, everybody. Well, I just want to thank you all for your time very much. We appreciate it, taking time out of your day on this busy Wednesday. It looks like we're going to wrap things up here. I just want to make sure that everyone who had requested a one-to-one conversation that we'll be in touch shortly. Any questions that did not get addressed, feel free to reach out and we'll address those on a one-to-one basis. Thank you all very, very much for your time, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone.